Alright, good morning everyone. My name is Min and I'll be your first affirmative on legalization of euthanasia. To start, I will begin with a short testimony. In Denver, a man by the name of Mr. Mitten had a case that is representative of why patients want euthanasia. Mr. Mitten had heart damage from rheumatic fever in his teens. He had an open heart operation followed by an unusually rough recovery. Doctors replaced his failing aortic valve with one made of bovine tissue. After 15 years, the valve began to deteriorate fast. He is feeling more pain and is reminded of the unusually rough recovery that happened previously 15 years ago. His doctors at the Denver Health Medical Center say he will probably die within 6 months. Mitten said, "They said that the only way to take care of this is to rip me open again, and that's not what I'm going to do." He was told he does not qualify for newer, less invasive surgical methods because the insurance doesn't cover it. Mr. Mitten is a representative case. It has a common ground with other cases that terminally ill patients have, which is pain, suffering, and a limited time left. In this case, he was denied newer, technologically advanced methods to help him survive, but his insurance probably doesn't cover it. Feeling betrayed, he decided to search the black market for chemicals used in animal euthanasia. Like Mr. Mitten, Americans do not deserve suffering, pain, and demoralizing situations. Americans deserve the right to end their pain and suffering if they can't handle it. So first and foremost, Americans deserve the right not to suffer. According to Faye Gersh, a doctor, said, "At the Hemlock Society, we get calls daily from desperate people who are looking for someone to end their lives which has lost all quality. Americans should enjoy a right guaranteed in the European Declaration of Human Rights, the right not to be forced to suffer." The American Civil Liberties Union said, "The right of a competent, terminally ill person to avoid excruciating pain and embrace a timely and dignified death bears the sanction of history and is implicit in the concept of ordered liberty. The exercise of this right is as central to personal autonomy and bodily integrity as rights safeguarded by this court's decisions relating to marriage, family relationships, procreation, contraception, child rearing, and the refusal or termination of life-saving medical treatment. In particular, this court's recent decisions concerning the right to refuse medical treatment and the right to abortion instruct that a mentally competent, terminally ill person has a protected liberty interest in choosing to end intolerable suffering by bringing about his or her own death." And my second point is that pain that demands heavy medication makes this heavily sedated person. This person would much rather have the options for physician-assisted suicide to end this excruciating pain. In other words, life is not enjoyable because medication results in a non-functional person. Dr. Veneter said that for some people, the prospect of continuing in a minimally conscious or unconscious state for the rest of their biological life is a fate worse than death. Opponents of a right to die sometimes reply that people with such views can be helped to realize that such a condition is not worse than death. However, this line of argument is dangerous precisely because it could be easily argued that those who think that death is worse than sedation until natural death could be helped to realize that they are wrong and that they should therefore agree to euthanasia. Basically saying hindsight, people that oppose legalization of euthanasia, when they actually realize that natural death is caused by their pain and suffering, they'll begin to regret that euthanasia should be legalized. My inherency claims are that people that oppose to legalization are contradictory by saying that it will be abused. The slippery slope is an illusion, and social groups will not be abused under legalized euthanasia. According to Dr. Veneter, to force people to die when they think that their lives are still worth living would be an undue interference with people's freedom. It is no less a violation of human freedom to force a continuation of life when people believe that their continued life is worse than death. Dan Gardner, a journalist, says in regards to the slippery slope, in the first Dutch study conducted in 1990, the rate of voluntary euthanasia was 1.7% of all deaths. In 1995, it was 2.4%. In 2000, it was 2.6%. In 2005, in the most recent year, for available data, the rate was 1.7%, exactly the same as it was in 1990. Opponents of legalization say every act of euthanasia will cheapen the value we put on life. Every advance will make the next advance easier. Opponents of euthanasia are nothing if not passionate. They often conclude their arguments with reference to Nazis' murder of the disabled and other undesirables. That's where it will end, they say. If this is true, then the Dutch have to have de facto legalized euthanasia for more than a quarter century. The Netherlands must be well down that slippery slope by now. So the rate of assisted suicide was 0.2% in 1990. In 2005, it was 0.1%. The rate of life-terminating acts without explicit results of the patient was 0.8% in 1990. In 2005, it was down by half to 0.4%. So what I propose that the legalization of euthanasia in the United States should follow the Oregon model, because the Oregon model has lots of regulations on physicians and has restrictions by residency. The qualifications of applying for euthanasia is to be an adult, 18 years of age or older, a resident of Oregon, but if legalized in other states, probably a resident of that state. Capable, defined as someone competent, someone conscious, and someone diagnosed with terminal illness that will lead to death within 6 months. So patients that meet these requirements can move on to the next step, which is another mechanism of their regulation. The patient must make 2 oral requests to his or her physician, separated by at least 15 days. The patient must provide a written request to his or her physician signed in the absence of 2 witnesses. The prescribing physician and the consulting physician must confirm the diagnosis and prognosis. The prescribing physician and the consulting physician must determine whether the patient is capable. If either physician believes that the patient's judgment is impaired by a psychiatric or psychological disorder, the patient must be referred for a psychological examination. That's another good mechanism for regulation. The prescribing physician must inform the patient of feasible alternatives to assisted suicide, including comfort care, hospice care, and pain control. This is a mechanism to prevent the slippery slope fallacy that palliative care will be essentially gone. The prescribing physician must request but may not require the patient to notify his or her next of kin of the prescription request. That's essentially the main mechanisms for regulation, and the Oregon model has specific regulatory requirements that will help the patient know how to handle their situation to suit their wants best. Thank you.